Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Robin Reximold. I'm an account supervisor at WordWrite Communications, and I will be your moderator for today's broadcast. We're excited to invite you inside the Pittsburgh 100 today. Our presentation will include information about our dynamic publishing platform, our unique content format, and how you can become one of our contributors. We'll also share an example of how the Pittsburgh 100 has made a big impact for one of our clients. Our speakers today include Ted Langford, Vice President and General Manager at the 100 Companies. He'll talk a little bit more about the 100 Companies on today's webinar. Dan Stefano, Editor of the Pittsburgh 100, who will tell you a little bit more about our content and what we have coming up in the future. And then Paul Fariga, publisher of the Pittsburgh 100, who can tell you a little bit what it will be like working with us as one of our contributors. Before we begin, I'd like to run through a few housekeeping items. First, the tool you are currently using is completely interactive, so please feel free to ask questions right within your viewing panel. Don't forget to turn on Adobe Flash so it runs smoothly for you. At the end of the presentation, we'll leave 15 minutes or so for a question and answer session. However, you can submit a question for our speakers at any time using the Q&A widget. We'll then collect your questions and answer them at the end. Finally, after the event, we invite you to take part in our brief survey to give us feedback on today's broadcast. You'll also receive an exclusive offer from today's presentation. Paul will discuss that in just a bit. At this time, all participants are in listen-only mode as this session is being recorded. I will now turn the presentation over to Ted.
Well, thank you, Robin. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. As Robin mentioned, my name is Ted Langford, and I'm with the 100 Companies based in Atlanta. So the 100 Companies was started 5 years ago in 2013. Well, it was founded by a PR firm in Atlanta, and we were challenged with getting information, news out about our clients through traditional media, newspapers, magazines, radio, TV, and we decided to make a bold decision, our founder did, to start a digital media channel just in Atlanta. It was a little risky, because people just were not doing that at that time. But we felt like because our staff at the PR firm was made up of a lot of journalists, reporters, writers, editors, that we had the resources that allow us to do this. But as I said, it was risky, and we thought we needed to get some input, so we held some focus groups among business leaders, business influencers, business professionals throughout Atlanta. And we asked them for their advice. If we decided to start a digital media channel, what do we need to do to be successful? And we got a lot of opinions about it in terms of what we should do. But three themes seemed to bubble up when we're talking to these business leaders, business influencers. The first one is they told us that all the stories needed to be short, needed to be to the point. They said they were busy, and they admitted to us that they had the attention span of a pea, and that even if we had a Pulitzer Prize winning story, that if it was long, they wouldn't read it. So at that point, we made a decision at that time to make all stories 100 words and all videos 100 seconds. Hence the name, we called it the Atlanta 100. The second thing that they told us is don't try to sell me. We get sold all the time. I'm not interested in reading something where you're trying to sell me. So we decided at that point to have no ads in the e-newsletter, in the digital media channel, and that all stories would be informational or educational and not promotional. The third thing they told us is that we need to have balance in the content. It didn't need to all be about business. They wanted to learn something about the local market. They want to know more about local history, upcoming events, and good places, interesting enough, good places to eat, dining, food, restaurants. So we made a decision to try to include a history story, an event marketing story, and a dining story or a food story in every issue of the Atlanta 100. So with that, we launched. We had 18,000 names of business people that we had collected at our PR firm. And our first issue, we had a 20% open rate, and we were, which was fantastic. And each issue we were publishing weekly, and each issue that we put out, the distribution, readers, subscribers kept growing, the open rate kept growing. And we, along with a lot of other PR firms at the time, were a member of the PRSA, a national PR association, and they heard about what we were doing, and they decided that they wanted to know more. So they invited our owner, Chris Schroeder, to come speak to them about what we were doing in Atlanta with the Atlanta 100. And from that, after he finished speaking, there were 10 PR firms that came up to him after, handed a business card and said, hey, we wanted to do one of those in our market. So it was at that point that we realized that this was more than just the Atlanta 100, that we were onto something here that maybe would resonate with people throughout the country. So we put together a team of people, consulting firms, and put some packages together. And in November of 2015, we launched the 100 companies, and we started presenting this to other PR firms in other markets. Today, we are in 18 markets, with another one scheduled to launch in January to be 19. That's the Ohio 100. And we have one that's international in Dubai. We hope to be in 40 markets by the end of 2019. And as you can see from the screen, this is a picture of the markets where we are and where we hope to be within the next year. So if you go ahead to the next slide. So the Pittsburgh 100 is one of our top members. They started about a year ago, a little over a year ago in October of last year, and they have a focus on business. And like us, their communication company has a lot of writers, journalists, editors, people who are familiar with writing. And this is one of the reasons they have been so successful with the Pittsburgh 100. As I was telling this call, we call it a digital media channel, and what that means is three parts to that. There's an e-newsletter that is sent out to more than 20,000 business professionals, business leaders throughout the Pittsburgh area. It's a website where all the stories that appeared in the e-newsletter are archived. And it's also a social media platform where we promote stories that are in the e-newsletter, and it takes people to the website. In the case, the partnership is with WordWrite Communications. We have exclusive partners in each of our markets that only one member, or unless they want to share it with someone that shares that membership with the Pittsburgh 100. So if you want to be in the Pittsburgh 100, you have to go through WordWrite Communications. It comes out every other week, bi-weekly, and it's a spotlight on business, local culture, and lifestyle, the things that I mentioned to you earlier about what we did in Atlanta. And most importantly, and I've already mentioned this as well, but we're not trying to sell somebody with this. This is informational, educational. We want to present the people that are the clients in this as thought leaders, as subject matter experts. The stories are not promotional. You know, one good example that I give about this is if you were a heating and air company, I'm just going to use that as an example. This wouldn't be about if your heating and air system was not working, you know, call us, we have a great deal for you. This would be about writing something about if you're a heating and air company, you know, and something's not working with your system here are things you should check, you know, in order to see maybe what's going on with this and see if it can be, you know, fixed itself. So go into the next slide if you would, Robin. But the Pittsburgh 100 has been in the market for a little over a year, as I mentioned. Their open rate is usually in the 15 to 20% range. It's been as high as 30%. It has an incredibly fast growing circulation since they started. distribution has been as high as 25,000, and it's constantly being opened by people that want to know more about what's going on in the Pittsburgh area from a business perspective. You know, most importantly, and one of the great things about the Pittsburgh 100 is Google certifies legitimate news sites, and it didn't take long for them to realize the work that Paul and Dan and Robin were doing with the Pittsburgh 100 was news, and they immediately certified the Pittsburgh 100 as an accredited Google News site. And what this means is Google recognizes them when people are doing searches as their content is credible, legitimate, and it usually their items end up coming up first or near the top on any kind of search. One more. So, you know, the great thing we find, and we've been doing this now, as you know, for 5 years, is that it works. It's got the right frequency. It's every other week. We actually have some members that do it every week. The content is good. There's stories, there's photos, there's videos. It's to the point. It's brief. It's short. It's easy read. In fact, all the stories are 100 words, and the videos are 100 seconds. And, you know, a couple of the things that we're looking and doing, there are other things that we're delving into, such as podcast.
All right. Thanks so much, Ted. So I just want to remind everyone, just make sure that you have the most recent version of Adobe Flash. We've heard from some people that you can't hear. So if you're having that issue, just make sure that you fix your Adobe Flash. If you have any questions, feel free to send us a Q&A, and we can try to help you troubleshoot you through that. All right. So next, I'll turn it over to Dan.
Hi, everybody. Hope you're having a good afternoon so far, even though it just started. But yeah, we're going to start with talking about a little bit with just our audience reach and readership. As Ted kind of alluded to, we try to look for people who are influencers, people who are making decisions at companies, and these are really companies of any size, from your small businesses, medium size, and larger. And we go from managers, directors, people in the C-suite, and these are the people who may not have enough time, as Ted alluded to as well, to sit and read an entire long-form article on a website, but we're looking for more easily digestible news. There's just information that they can get nice and quick. Maybe it's a quick article about just a quick business practice, or just what is a trend in communications, and that's the information that we try to get across to our readers. Distribution right now is about a little more than 23,000, and that keeps growing as we've been around for a little more than a year now, and lately we've been able to put more bandwidth into the 100, and that's helping things grow exponentially. Our open rates are around 20%, which is that's nationally within the company, and that's pretty much average about for any emails that you'll get in the world. You think about whenever you get your inbox, a lot of people are hovering over that delete button pretty quickly. So, we're happy to see that, we're getting the open rates at about the proper rate, and we do try to keep an eye on our analytics and understand what are the addresses that maybe aren't opening it. We try to constantly check our lists and make sure that they're just staying up to date, and there might not just be a garbage email address on there. So if you're getting your information out there, it's going to go to the right people, and it's going to be seen. But also our social media, as again, if we put more bandwidth into the 100 in recent months, that's growing, and across our social channels, we really put a focus on Instagram, believe it or not. But we've got across all of our channels, we're upwards of 1,000 followers, and that's another thing that's just growing lately. As I said, we've been able to put more attention into it recently. But moving on, why are we different? And again, Ted talked about it, but you can't emphasize enough that there is no advertising. This is just it's a straight. What you see is what you get whenever you open your newsletter. What I like to think of is the 100 kind of reminds me of the front page of a newspaper. Now, I used to work in newspapers, and there are two parts that I think people always take a look at, if you look at newspapers anymore, which is rare these days. But people look at the front page, and they look at the sports section. And we think about the front page. It's nice. It's easily digestible. You see all these big headlines in front of you. A lot of people aren't even making it past the jumps, though. You know, they don't want to look at the inside of the newspaper. So what you see whenever you get our newsletter is just these quick, easy to digest stories that are nice and quick to read, and they inform you. They're not just slight, advertorials that are just trying to sell you a product. So it's useful in that regard. Another important factor is just other markets. Ted talked about, we're in 18 areas and going into, going to be soon 19, and hopefully by the end of next year, 40, which would be huge. Some of our clients, some of our contributors that we've had, their stories have been so engaging that they actually end up in other markets. We have a law firm that we work with, and we'll talk about them later. Their stories have been so interesting that they end up in Memphis or Arizona, and that helps them get, readership. It drives people to their own websites, and so it's been useful. And it's great to be a part of this network, knowing that we can help connect people with other parts of the country and other markets that they may not, might not be right on their radar. So it's great for that. We look at our content direction, and the first thing that we always try to think of whenever we're putting together stories is, what am I learning? And what that really means is, again, it comes down to, we're not trying to sell you on anything. We want to inform someone. If we're talking about an event, we don't want to just say, the event is happening on such and such day at such and such place. It's more, why does this event have such cultural importance? What exactly, is, what exactly, why do people care about this socially? Is there more, why is this happening? So that's one of my favorite questions that I always ask is, why is this important? So that's another thing we try to focus on with everything that we write. And importantly is we will work with our contributors to make sure that their content is approaching this, that their content is meeting these parameters that we try to put on our stories. But we talk about our own expertise and your expertise. Our expertise, we like to think that we're professional communicators and storytellers, and so we try to get that across, at least in a few stories each issue, is talk about what are the trends in communications. Is it brand journalism? Is it, webinars? We talk about, what are the trends that are going on today. And that's important, but also it's your expertise. So if we have contributors out there, say, one of the law firms that we work with, they can speak on a wide range of topics, whether it's drones, service animals, any types of crazy things that you wouldn't imagine, but they can actually, speak on, how they matter in the law. Or we have healthcare professionals that can provide content for us, and we make sure that, again, that they're not selling anything, but it's brand journalism. They're positioning themselves as thought leaders, which is really, at the end of the day, what brand journalism comes down to is you're not selling, you're making sure that you're just putting yourself out there as a leader in your field, as someone who really knows what they're talking about. Again, there's culture that we talk about. We try to talk about who are the people that have the pulse on Pittsburgh. Be they artists, be they politicians, be pretty much, anybody who has a, prominent place in the city. We try to, highlight these people. Every other week we have what we call our Pittsburgh People feature. And that's just finding somebody interesting in the community, somebody that, you may never heard of, whether it's a brewer, maybe it's somebody who just is a photographer that you may not have heard of, but these people who are doing special things and highlighting their roles in our community. You'll see we have a picture of coffee there. Well, that's because every other week we have the Pittsburgh Roast column from one of our writers, Lewis here, who he's got his finger on the pulse of coffee in Pittsburgh. And again, these are just, recurring features that we can use, and we can, reformat in different ways. Whether one week we're going to use it as a video, the next week we do it as a story, and, these are just useful ways of, providing readers with something that they know they're going to get, but will be a little bit different each time. So that's useful. You'll see in the bottom there we say putting events in context. And again, this comes back to that, whenever we talk about events and, the things that are coming in our city, what are the important stuff, say, such as Light Up Night or holidays. One of the challenges that we have with the 100 is that since we are bi-weekly, sometimes stories may have a shorter shelf life. We've got Veterans Day coming up here on the 11th, which is a very special day. We want to mention it in the publication here, but it can come down to after November 11th. Is that story doesn't have much use anymore? Is it, are people going to care as much about it? If we could say, hey, there's going to be a parade on Sunday, that's great and all, but, does that story have use after that? But, one thing that we try to do with all of our stories, whether they're about events or upcoming holidays, is just try to spin it forward. And so in this Veterans Day story that we'll be running later this week, we talk about the important issues that veterans face in terms of, mental health issues, and we try to focus on that. So that's another thing. If you have an event, if someone wants to contribute in that regard, talk about it, we can kind of spin it forward to say why these things are important. It all comes down to, again, what am I learning? And the question why, which is, coming up here, we've started publishing video content, and that's another thing that, before, whenever we didn't have quite as much bandwidth, we couldn't, get to. But lately, one of our staffers here has been able to start producing great video content, and one of our stories, we actually just focused on the new Pittsburgh Playhouse. We were able to get an inside tour of it, and just looked at a lot of people haven't had a chance to get, because not many of us here, at least, are students at Point Park. But yeah, it's just it's great content, and if you're able to contribute these videos yourself, then it's only going to help get your brand out there. And as I'm sure a lot of people have seen, video content is the future, pretty much for everybody. It's, I believe, anytime you see studies online, it says in the future here by 2020, over half of all content online will be consumed by video. So that's really this is I think a strong way for people to get involved and get themselves out there. We can produce their own video, or you can contribute video. We're happy to put that out there as long as it falls within our parameters. Again, if it's not selling, so that's another important factor that we have. If we can find our slides.
So right now we're showing you one of our newest videos, which will actually be out in tomorrow's issue. So yeah, let's take a look at our recent video that we produced in-house.
Frame rate may not be quite. Going forward, we've added just a couple of small elements to our own website that are important. Live polling, that's just it's something simple that you don't think of, but you see it on a lot of websites, and that's actually something that doesn't exist on any other 100 companies site right now. Is just polling, including also an events calendar. This is a way, if you do have an event and you want to get it out there and you don't want to write a 100-word story about it, we can pop it into our calendar, and the best part of that is it's free. So there's just little ways that we're trying to get other people involved with the 100, and you can get your message out there. And obviously they're simple, but they're effective, and yeah, it's useful. Going forward, Ted may have talked about the Travel 100, which is a new product coming out from the 100 companies. And we'll have more about that going into the future. But this is basically a 100 product that will be strictly focused on traveling. And that, again, kind of focuses on the business sector and people that are involved there doing a lot of traveling, these people who are in management positions, in C-suite positions. So, it's just another great little piece of content that, the 100 companies is putting out. And it shows that, they're dedicated to constantly evolving the product there. And as well podcasts. Within the company, not too many 100 companies members put out podcasts. I know Arkansas does a really excellent job with them right now, but that's another thing we'd like to try to investigate further going forward. And we're excited to just what the different ideas that other 100 companies members come up with, and whether it's podcasts or Travel 100, and it's truly a network. And so the ideas that they can bring out, truly they work great for us.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Paul Fariga. I'm the publisher of the Pittsburgh 100. I want to first of all thank all of you for joining us today, and thank Robin and Dan for all their hard work in putting this together, and our colleague Aaron Hogan, who is monitoring the chat pane. So once again, mention just real briefly, make sure you have the right version of Adobe. I think we're okay with that now. But if you do have any questions, we're taking questions now, and we're going to be answering those in a few minutes. So you may be asking yourself, why does a PR firm put together a publication like the Pittsburgh 100? As Ted said earlier in the webinar today, we are experiencing here in Pittsburgh, and I'm sure those of you who are joining us today can take a few minutes and think about it from your own experience. I'll call it evolution in the traditional news media space. And we found, as SPR did in Atlanta, that our clients don't have as many opportunities to share their great untold stories. We connected with the 100 companies and became, as Ted mentioned, a new member just about a year ago. Our first publication was October 26, 2017. So what's our role here? There's a lot of room in the journalism community in Pittsburgh for publications like the 100 and many others. Our publication is different because we can guarantee that your content is going to publish. We can work with you on it. We're going to make sure it gets where it's supposed to go, and we're going to make sure that it'll get there when you want it to get there. Now, we do have a couple of sponsors right now who have what we call category exclusivity, and that's something you might want to think about depending upon what your organization does. We can have a conversation with you offline if that's something that interests you. As Dan mentioned earlier, we're going to talk about it again in a couple minutes. We've got a great law firm here in town, and they've got the category for law when it comes to legal matters, whether Dan was saying whether it's drones or many things you probably wouldn't even think about. That's their purview. So something to think about there. Now, why would you want to do this? Why would you want to consider publishing in the Pittsburgh 100? Well, number one, it's all about thought leadership, and this is something at our PR firm that we focus on with our clients. In today's 21st century information overloaded society, everyone is looking for people who can give them that kind of a shortcut of insight and information to guide them in the right direction. So the Pittsburgh 100 is an opportunity to position the leadership of your organization as thought leaders or subject matter experts. But it's not just that. As Dan pointed out and as Ted pointed out, we're not looking to create a sales-oriented publication. It's all about education. It's all about information. It's all about learning. And one way that our clients have been able to do that is to be a member of the community by participating in the Pittsburgh 100. So the 100 can become a way to share the good works that your organization does, a way for your organization to show support for the region generally, for specific charities, nonprofits, etc. It's also a great way to demonstrate industry leadership, share research. Maybe your organization has done a survey of your clients or the kinds of organizations that your clients serve, and you'd like to share that. And then I'm going to talk about this again in a couple minutes. As Dan mentioned, our social media and our content is really doing wonders for our sponsors in terms of their search engine optimization, and search engine marketing. So let's take a look at an example here. What we've got on the screen is a story that ran in a recent issue of the 100. And I'm just very quickly going to point some things out to you. So what we're able to do with the 100 is align your focus or your messaging with a specific category. Since we're the publisher, we can also help you get the right photo and caption in there. This is very important. I'm going to talk about it in a minute. We can hyperlink wherever you would like to go, typically to your website. You know, if you're trying to promote an event, a seminar, or if you're looking to get the word out about an initiative you're working on, you can hyperlink right from the story to where you would like people to visit. We have an archive of previous columns. And as I mentioned earlier, we're directly connecting to social media. Sometimes we get reader comments. For those of you on the webinar today who might be a little bit concerned about commentary on social media or civility or something like that, we have the ability to control and also manage reader comments. We also have the opportunity to do what we call 100-plus stories. So some of you may have seen, we did a special issue around the Tree of Life incident, which of course is very sad. And we sent out a special issue of the 100. And it was really just a column by me that was a longer form and 100 words, and then it can link either to your website or to the Pittsburgh 100 website. So we've been talking about this law firm. Who are they? They're one of the top regional law firms in Pittsburgh, Meyer, Unkevic, and Scott. And they've been with us in the 100 since the very beginning. Every issue has an article written by an attorney at Meyer, Unkevic, and Scott. And as you can see here, many of their articles have been picked up in other cities, which is really a great benefit. As Ted talked about and Dan talked about, this network continues to grow. And depending upon what your organization focuses on, you may have some thought leadership, some educational information that you'd like to share more broadly beyond just the Pittsburgh region. And you do have that opportunity to do that. Now, in Meyer Unkevic's case, and this is very interesting and demonstrates the success of taking this sort of brand journalism approach. The Pittsburgh 100 has become the #1 referral source to the Meyer Unkevic website, which is really very cool. Now, not only that, Pittsburgh 100 readers are spending a lot of time on the Meyer Unkevic website. You know, 14% are not only clicking through, they're visiting a second page, 8% a third page, and 5% even deeper to a fourth page. Probably many of you on the webinar today are aware of this, but the average time spent on a website is less than 3 seconds. So when somebody goes through and clicks on a website initially, they'll look at the home page or landing page or wherever they land, and boom, they're usually out in 3 seconds. So for that many readers to start at the Pittsburgh 100 and click through 4 pages deep on Meyer Unkevic is really amazing. And here's something very interesting. As I said earlier, we view the Pittsburgh 100 as a great addition to the landscape here in Pittsburgh. We're not looking to compete directly with other publications in Pittsburgh. But guess what? Journalists at those publications, who of course are working harder than ever these days, are doing more than they ever have, covering more beats. They read the 100. And stories in the 100 have led to journalists from other publications taking a look at what we've done, high quality, information focused, not salesy, and use that kind of like a tip sheet to go out and see if what we've written about, the company or the organization we've written about, might be suitable as a story for them. So very interesting. So how can you contribute to the 100? As Dan and Ted both mentioned, focus group research shows that leaders of organizations don't want banner ads, they don't want pop-ups, they want information that's valuable to them. So the Pittsburgh 100 is supported by sponsors. These are organizations who have articles in however many issues of the publication they would like, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And we've listed here some of the options that are available for sponsors. Category exclusivity, branding, having the story in the issue, an archive, social media, and as we talked about earlier, also available to be published in other markets around the country. Now, Robin had mentioned at the very beginning of the webinar today that we would be sharing a special offer, and we will in a few minutes. This, what you're seeing right now, is a snapshot of the details for sponsorship. We're going to have a link at the end of the webinar today where you can download all of the details about sponsorship of the Pittsburgh 100, including the special offer, just for those of you participating on today's webinar. Okay, so quickly, before we get to questions, the special offer. In honor of our first anniversary, we have inaugural pricing for 3 articles or 2 articles and a supplied video. This offer will be available to you through December 31st, and as I mentioned, you'll be receiving a link that has more details on this in the near future. Robin, back to you.
Thanks so much, Paul. So we'll go ahead and now open the presentation up for a Q&A session. If you haven't submitted a question yet, we can still take that, but we have already received a few, so we'll go ahead and kick those off. So our first question is, can I promote products or my business? So we've talked a lot about promoting events and different thought leadership articles, but one of the questions is, can I promote products or my business?
I can take that, and we've talked about, I don't want to discourage people if they have, really say an interesting product or something. We're not going to put out a straight advertisement saying that this is the greatest thing that's ever been invented, but if it has some social utility, say if you've invented the next, Apple Watch or something, that's just like a really cool thing that came out of Pittsburgh that somebody from, say, a startup at CMU designed, then that's something, you can definitely write about. That's something that has, interest. And, or if it's a business that, is doing something really unique, say, for the environment, then in that case, that's also something that, without being promotional, we can, write about and talk about and, get out there because it has some, interest, some utility. And, yeah, so I think, the answer to that is probably yes and no.
So this is Paul. I just want to add to what Dan shared. I'm actually speaking on this topic, and we'll be using the Pittsburgh 100 as an example at a regional event in Richmond next week. And in preparation for that, I did a lot of research, and I have this quote that I'd like to share that I think will amplify what Dan just shared. And this comes from Stephanie Lawsey, who's the head of content for Visa. And Visa is doing a lot of its own brand journalism. And her quote is, "The reason to launch your own is not to crow about yourselves. You can try that if you like, but I promise you the audience will vote with their feet. It's like any interaction. Do you prefer to spend your time with people who go on and on about themselves or whose conversation adds something to your life and addresses your needs in some way?" So I'll give you another example. They're not a client of the 100, but Lowe's has a great portion of their site that shows people how to do things around the home. So guess what? Do they want people to come into Lowe's and buy their plumbing tools or supplies from Lowe's? Of course they do. But to Dan's point, the content is useful, and that's where you really get to the yes and no. If you're writing the article, the reader is going to understand that you are trying to engage with them and have a conversation with them. And if you're a for-profit organization, one that probably involves a sale. But it's got to be good content.
All right, thank you so much. So another question that we just received, what categories are already exclusive other than drones and law?
So drones that's good, sense of humor, is not actually a category. we have law and health insurance, and we also have a partnership with the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership.
Yeah, just I think if we mention drones once or twice, it's because we've written about it a few times. But it is not drones are not exclusive. We can, if anybody has anything fun with drones, please go right ahead. We can fly all over the place with drones.
Sure.
Yeah. Unless we get a drone company, then we're in trouble.
No pun intended.
Yeah. I was trying the pun. That was true. Let's go.
Yeah.
All right, so our third question, do you accept unaffiliated content as long as it's consistent with your publishing objectives? For an example, an independent domain expert who provides high value information.
So that's a great question, and the answer is it depends. And what it depends on is the focus of the 100, providing a full picture of the Pittsburgh region. So the experience of the 100 companies and here in Pittsburgh is every story is not sponsored content. You can't really provide the kind of publication that the readers want by saying, oh, I just went out randomly and found however many companies and we're just going to write about what they do. So on a case-by-case basis, the answer is yes. And if you think you have a story that would be good for the Pittsburgh 100, I'd ask that you email Dan, and his email address is editor@thepittsburgh100.com, and he'll have a good offline conversation with you. As an example, Dan mentioned the coffee column we do. Also, the video we showed you comes from our Pittsburgh Buildings column. None of that is sponsored content. Those are all just interesting stories. So we are looking for them, but we make the decisions on a case-by-case basis.
Absolutely, and I think, as I tried to get across, there are different ways that we can tackle each of those columns, and, if there's, say, a week that we have to, say goodbye to them and get something else in there, our schedule generally is pretty fluid, and we can kind of, make room for somebody if they have a great, interesting story to talk about.
All right. Another question, how do you use social media advertising to promote your stories?
So we are very active on Instagram, and we are advertising on Instagram to grow the reach of the 100. And what we're finding, which is kind of a corollary to the idea of short stories and visual and video, is that's working very well for us. We are growing our subscriber base quite a bit by doing some paid advertising on Instagram.
All right. Well, I think that's all the questions that we have for now. Of course, if any questions come to mind, please feel free to email Paul Fariga or Dan Stefano. They can certainly get back to you. And then don't forget to keep an eye out for the email that we'll be sending you in just a few moments. So thank you all so much for joining us. We hope we get the opportunity to work with you. Before signing off, please take advantage of our event survey. It's going to be located on your screen. We look forward to hearing your feedback. We'll also be sharing a recording of today's session. So like I said, that will be in the email that you'll get in just a few moments. Thanks, everyone.